Hey, what's up, guys? I am here with Mike Matei. What's up, man?
How you doing? Good to see you.
So it's not Matei, right?
That's funny. One time sent a letter to David Letterman, which got
I swear this is exactly what I wanted to open with because I heard this story and I didn't know if it was just a rumor or not.
oh yeah. Actually, there's the video of it on the website because I used to watch David Letterman like every night. I'm a huge fan of that, and I would tape it a lot of times, and then watch it the next day because I had school in the morning, so I would set my VCR. And then it would tape. So I taped it every night, and then I would watch it. So I knew that I had sent in my letter. So one day I'm watching it and watching my tape of it, which is why I have it on tape, or why I had it on tape all those years. Because when I saw it, I kept the tape, you know. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, yeah, he used to have on. I don't know if you watched David Letterman at all, but he used to have on Larry Bud Melman, who was this older guy that they used to do skits with and stuff like that. And one day I sent in a letter and I said, why do all the TV talk shows like Johnny Carson and whatever have the city skylines in the back? Like, why not something else? Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, Mike, I don't. And he's like, this letter's from Mike Matei or whatever. And then he read the letter. That's where that's from. But then what was funny about it was he's like, I don't know what the reason, but if you zoom in right there and the camera zooms in on the fake background building and it goes into the window and then it like does a transition into like the inside of the building, and it's Larry Bud Melman with this like hot like half naked girl and he just holds up a sign that says "Eat your heart out, Letterman," and then he like pulls the shades down. So it was funny.
That's awesome. What a neat piece of history.
Yeah.
The closest I ever came was I was in a Megadeth video once.
You were
they were filming the Gears of War song, and I just happened to be on this one website, and they said, if you want to be in the video, email. And apparently it sold out in like a minute. I just happened to click at the exact right second. And when the guy with the video camera comes around, I was dead sober. I was quiet. I look like this. I don't really look like a metalhead, even though I'm a huge metalhead. And the guy with the camera was like, all right, guys, just remember, the more enthusiastic people are the ones that are more likely to be on camera. I was like, you could just stay right here, dude. And he looks at me. He's like, just trust me. You're going to want to hang around about here. And then sure as shit, the only crowd shot of the video was me just right in the camera, like,
I have to see that video. You have to send it to me after this.
It's like a 2-second shot, but I was so proud because I was the only crowd shot. I'm like, that's right, piece of history.
That's great.
So, in the extremely unlikely event that somebody might not be familiar with your work, I guess let's just start at the beginning. Were you just always a kid that really loved video games, or did somebody get you into it, or?
Okay, so my first exposures to video games, well, I had an uncle, and I remember him having the Intellivision. I have an older sister, and they would play the Intellivision. And I think that was the first video game thing I ever saw in my life, was them playing the Intellivision. And I was like 1 or 2, and I have this vague memory of them playing it, but I didn't play it at that point. So that was like the very, very beginning. But then when I was probably, or my sister had the Atari 2600, and we would play the Atari 2600, and so we had that growing up. So when I was 2, 3, 4 years old, I did a lot of playing the Atari games. We didn't have like a ton of them, I remember, but yeah, we played a lot of the ones we had. I remember we had Jungle Hunt, and we had like Frogger, and the standard ones. I think we had E.T. and we had Pac-Man, and I didn't know how to play E.T. as a kid, so I would I'd play the other games. And then other than that, my sister used to do roller skating, and I would go to the roller skating rink with her. And with the roller skating rink on the side, I didn't really do the roller skating. I was too young. I was like 3 years old. They put me out there for 2 seconds, and then that would be it. I would be in the they had an arcade on the side of the roller rink, and that, I'm talking 1984 probably.
Jeez.
1983, 1984, something like that. So I'm a little kid. My parents had me. I'm off messing around as a little kid with, I remember playing Pac-Land, Space Invaders, regular Pac-Man, all the Pac-Man games, and Asteroids and all that kind of stuff that they had there. It was just like a mini arcade, but they probably like were 15 machines or something. But at the time, you remember, that was the era, so those were the machines that they had. So that was probably my first exposure to like classic games, which I loved. I loved going in there. And
do you remember that feeling being a kid and then you just walk in and you're surrounded by these huge machines and the lights and the sounds and everything? Yes. It's like, it was so amazingly overwhelming. Like, what the fuck is this? I want more of it.
Yeah, that was the first thing that made me like, oh, this is awesome. What is this? And what I specifically really remember is really Pac-Man, because they had Pac-Man had that Disney sort of artwork to it, where Pac-Man had like the pie eye and it looked like 1930s animation like on the side of the cabinet and all that. And I remember seeing all that, and I really loved cartoons as a kid. Mm-hmm. So seeing like going into a place and having these machines that you could play a game that had like this Pac-Man, it was like amazing. And I always liked in the arcades, it was really dark. It was like pitch black in the arcades pretty much, and then they'd have the bright lights and everything, and just the whole experience of it was awesome. And there was quite a few arcades by me. There was one in the mall that I went to a lot. There was one on the because I grew up in New Jersey, the Seaside Heights Boardwalk. There used to be a really good one, but it got wrecked in the recent storm in the last few years. But I used to go to that a lot. There was a lot, of arcades back then, and I went through the whole period of, you had your Pac-Man and your Space Invaders and all that stuff, and then you started to have like Double Dragon and those type of games, and then eventually it moved into, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter and all that. So I went through the whole, thing. I lived through it, and it was awesome. But I really am most nostalgic for the early 80s machines, like the Space Invaders, Pac-Man, all that stuff, because that's the most sort of forgotten now, because it was longer ago. Because I think a lot of people remember, that are our age, probably remember going into the arcades and playing Street Fighter 2 and stuff like that. But not as many people remember going into the arcade and playing Frogger and stuff, because I was older and those machines a lot of times were gone by then. So I'm fortunate enough that I got to experience a lot of that, and it was really I love the 90s machines, but the 80s machines were like, oh my god, you go into an arcade and you play like Donkey Kong, and it was I love that, and I still love it to this day. I collect arcade stuff, and it's one of my passions.
Yeah, with technology changing as fast as it does, being able to get in towards the beginning means, makes such a difference. I was just talking to Phone Dork. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but he got started about the same time as you, and he loves some of these old Atari games. And, even as a kid, my first entry to all this was, I was 6 or 7, and it was NES and then arcades immediately after. So even then, going back to some of the early Atari stuff, I was like, it's a little clunky. Maybe I can go. And I was just being able to experience it when it was new and fresh and cutting edge, and you don't care that it's bad graphics because you don't know. It's like people that play Call of Duty and then go try to play a NES game. You know what I mean? So it's cool that you got it at the beginning where you could just experience it where it was still thrilling.
True, and I've never. This might seem weird, but I've never felt that it wasn't thrilling, because I can, to this day, still put on some Atari game, as long as it's like a decent Atari game. I can put on Dragonfire or something like that, and it's a lot of them are really good games. And regardless of whether you have a game that came out this week or you have a game that came out in 1979, as long as the game is really good, that's where the thrill comes from. The graphics and the music and all that additional stuff enhances the experience, but you can have just as much fun. I remember back when we did the AVGN Pong consoles video, one of the most fun times I ever had playing video games was James had the Fairchild Channel F system.
Yep.
And there was a game on that, which I think it was is sort of like a Pong tennis type of thing, where there's just the ball going back and forth. But the way the controllers are on that system, it was a very unique controller type. And I remember playing that with him, and it was one of the most fun times I ever had in my life playing video games. And it was a ball going on screen, and we were laughing and joking and playing this game. And all it is a ball on a line on screen. And it's really the person you're playing with, and if it's a good game, that, and I'm not, a lot of people feel that I'm, just into the retro games and stuff. I'm not. As long as, the game is good. There are games that are just as good today as there were then. And there was a lot of crappy games then, and there was a lot of good games then. There's bad and good games in every era, so.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's, the name of my channel is RetroRGB, same with my website, and everybody assumes the same about me. But the truth is, the reason I really got so far back into this, and while, of course, the nostalgia is always a fun feeling, it's just because my favorite games are side-scrolling action games. And for a long time, that was the uncool game to make, so people weren't making them.
Right.
So, now you have things like Axiom Verge, which is just phenomenal, Shovel Knight, all that stuff, the new Sonic game. And
it's made a comeback, yeah.
Yeah, but for a while, like, if you said, all right, well, I want to play a game I've never played before and I really want to play this style, your only choice was to go back. So
yeah, that's true. So it's nice that's all made a comeback as of recently. Yeah.
So got a really early start as a young kid with all this stuff. Do you remember the first console that was yours, or was it always just like, your family shared the console?
Okay, well, the first console that would have been mine would have been the NES, because the Atari 2600 was my sister's. I specifically remember I was like 2 or 3 years old when I was playing that, and I specifically remember playing, I want to say it was Phoenix for Atari 2600. I'm playing that, and I don't know what happened, but the controller wasn't working very well, or I thought it wasn't working very well as a 2 or 3 year old. And I got the bright idea in my head of going and grabbing my dad's screwdriver and unscrewing the bottom of the Atari controller and trying to fix it as a 3-year-old and having no idea what to do. And then the controller was in a million pieces, and my sister came back and she was yelling and screaming at me that I broke the Atari. And then for a while we only had one controller because I broke the other one, or I disassembled it because I was trying to fix it and I didn't know what I was doing. But I'm sorry, what was the question? I just went off on a tangent.
No, that was a funny story. No, the first console that's actually yours. My family got a NES for the family, but do you remember like the one that you lusted over, the one that was your thing? Was the NES?
Yeah, it was the NES. And that's funny that some people say NES, because I never knew growing up then. I never knew anybody that ever said NES. It was always NES, but that's funny. I wonder if that's a regional thing.
Maybe we just called it Nintendo for years.
Yeah. Well,
even when the Super Nintendo and N64, it was really only recently that I started referring to it as that.
That is true, actually. Once Super Nintendo came out, and beyond that, like once like N64, then everybody's referring to it as the NES, but back then it was Nintendo, because that was the big console. I got the NES. When did I get the NES? Probably 1986, I think I got the NES, and my first games were Ghostbusters. Obviously Mario, because it came with Mario Duck Hunt. It came with the system, and I think Jaws, and I think that was it. I think those were my first, and then shortly after that I got more. And
2 out of the 4 were wins.
Well, yeah, your Mario and all that, and I think I had Hogan's Alley too, actually, which I liked, and I really liked the shooting the cans in that.
Oh yeah, light gun games were just the greatest way to kill 20 minutes here and there,
Yeah, but. So then, not long after, I was on the school bus, and the kid that lived across the street from me he got The Legend of Zelda, and he had the map, and he was on the bus, and we were talking about, he had the map on the bus, and all the kids are looking at the map. Ooh, this kid's got the map, and we're all looking at the map, and he's talking about the game, and I look at the map, and I was like, wow, that's a really cool map, or whatever. And then he's talking about the Lost Woods and getting through the Lost Woods and all that stuff, and I'm like, this sounds really cool. So I went to Toys R Us with my mom. We go to Toys R Us, and it had the long aisle of all the they just had the what, I forget what they're called, but the cards on the wall that showed they didn't have the actual boxes of the games. It was just a picture of the games, and underneath there was a little yellow tag with the price ticker or something like that. And then you take the tag out and you walk up to the front where they had the lady in the room that had all the games, which was in a closed off thing, and you hand her the ticket, and she gives you the game, and then you take the game and you bring it to the register, and that's how you would buy the games then. And but I do remember when the lady gave me the game, I looked at it and it was gold. It was gold, and none of the other games I had ever had were gold. Like the Atari carts were black, and or some of them had that sort of like pointed end to it and stuff like that. And then the other Nintendo games were all gray. This was the only game this game was gold. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, this is really interesting, like packaging. This thing looks awesome. It seemed as a kid like you were holding a gold bar.
It did. You knew even before you plugged it in, there was something special about this one.
Right. So you're like, okay, this is really cool. The packaging's awesome. And I remember looking at the lion thing on there and being like, wow, this is like super cool. Like because I always loved like the mythology and all that stuff, even as a little kid. And so I bring it home and then I start playing the game, and the game was to this day, it's my favorite game ever made. And what a great thing that they made the game gold. And there was the only one, well, it was one of the few on NES that were gold, and it deserved to be gold. And I guess they knew that. They must have known, like, the game is really good. Let's make it something special with the packaging. You know, they must have had that idea in their head. Like, they knew it was going to be a success, I guess.
Did you ever see the Famicom Disk System packaging for it?
I did. I have seen it. I actually own it. And it wasn't until recently that I got more and more into the Famicom, the original Nintendo stuff, because, you know, obviously grew up with the North American stuff. And oh my God, the artwork for the Famicom stuff is so awesome. I've been collecting Famicom boxes, and I almost feel like part of me feels like I love the stuff we grew up with, but it's kind of like those are the original releases, like the Japanese ones. And sometimes you look at the art and it's like better, and so I don't know.
The music on a lot of those is way better too because of the Famicom sound chips. So
yeah, so I've been really getting into that. I love Famicom stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, have you ever gone through and played some of the... So I guess the fan hacks are they take the Japanese version and then dub it with, you know, the US translations, but then they fix the translations. So you actually... A lot of the things make a little more sense.
I'm trying to... What's an example of what you mean exactly?
Well, Zelda is one of them, but that's more of the minor changes. You know, like...
you're saying, like, when you play Zelda... things like you blow into the controller and you can't do that in our version, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
that and some of the original versions were just a little bit different. So I think there was a big thing about no religion at all, no religious references in the US and Europe. So they talk about, they word things slightly different in the Japanese version. And it's not that it would have made a difference or anything. It's just, you know, I guess they were being extra cautious. But I loved finding some of the games that I loved as a kid. And then, you know, obviously it's all in Japanese, but people will do the read translations. So somebody will go back, and because a lot of times they just kind of haphazardly went through it because they didn't really know which games were going to, you know, make a lot of money and which were just going to get re-released and forgotten about.
Yeah, I think we've done a lot of stuff like that with the translations, and then they bring it over, and it was always funny when they would do a bad translation. You know, classically was in Double Dragon the Bimmy and Jimmy
and the Castlevania stuff that made absolutely no sense in the US version.
Sure, like Simon's Quest and, you know, all the translation stuff. There was one, God, I can't remember the title of it off my head, but it was the game says fucking. It's a Famicom game. James and I did a video of it. I can't remember the title.
I vaguely remember that, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like Patton Kun or something like that is the name of it, and it's like an army game. But in over there, it doesn't mean what it means here. So it's just funny that, you know, all the translation stuff, and that was always one of the points that made Angry Video Game Nerd funny. That was to this day, it's bad. The bad translation stuff is always a good place to go to for some of the comedy.
Yeah, the end of Ghostbusters cracked me up. That one was great.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
All that. Yeah. It's funny.
So when you were a kid, did you get Game Boy, Game Gear, all those too?
Okay, so as a kid, I had it was Christmas time, and I got the Game Boy for Christmas, and I had already heard about I've told the story before, but I had already heard about and I think played the Game Gear. I think a friend of mine had it because it wasn't until later. I think the Game Boy came out first, and then sometime later the Game Gear came out. But I got the Game Boy at whatever point the Game Gear was out, so that's when I got the Game Boy. And then I was like, oh, I really wanted the Game Gear. So we went to the store and returned the Game Boy, and then they used the credit or whatever, and then I got the Game Gear, which is what I wanted. And it's not that I didn't like the Game Boy. It's just that I thought the Game Gear was cooler because it was in color and it was backlit and everything. And I had already tried the Game Boy, and it was fine, but it was like I really wanted the Game Gear because I thought it was cool. And I played the Donald Duck game on it, and because I always loved Donald Duck, and I think that's one of the reasons I wanted it. So yeah, I played that, and I really loved the Game Gear. I didn't have a Sega Genesis until much later in my life. My friend across the street, I remember, had the and we were talking about my first exposures actually to video games and everything. Before I had played the NES, I played the Sega Master System because my next door neighbor had a Sega Master System. I used to go over there and play it. And then at some point for my birthday or something, I got the NES. I don't exactly remember. And I got the NES, and then I started playing the NES and everything. But yeah, as far as the Game Boy, it's been in recent years that I've really developed a love for the Game Boy. And I've started to go back, and I kind of like now that I didn't play a ton of Game Boy as a kid. I played some of the games here and there. I did borrow my friend's Game Boy as a kid, and I beat Link's Awakening as a kid because he had the game and he let me borrow it for a week or something, and I beat the game as a kid.
Great
so I
game
did have,
too.
Yeah, and oh my god, it was a great game, and that was I thanked my friend for letting me borrow it and do that as a kid, but because I didn't have it. But in a way, I'm happy that I didn't play all those games because now I'm going back and I'm playing a lot of those Game Boy games that I didn't get a chance to.
And experiencing them for the first time.
And I'm like, oh my god, wow, what a great system the Game Boy is. And I,
yeah, I love when that happens. I just replayed, so I hadn't played Link's Awakening since it came out way back when. And then I just replayed DX with a few of the fan enhancements to it. So no, the game is the same, just, they fixed a couple of things. And it was just, I loved it. It was just like every awesome Zelda game you could imagine. It was almost like playing it for the first time because I didn't remember anything about it.
Have you played Breath of the Wild?
I have.
So, what is it about the top-down classic, like Link's Awakening style Zelda games, The Link to the Past, the original, those style Zeldas, versus Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Breath of the Wild, all the newer 3D Zeldas? There's a different feeling to the games, and it's not just that they're top down. There's something about it, and I haven't quite figured it out yet. But I've always felt that, I guess going back because I had played the original Zelda first, and then I played Link to the Past, and that's kind of how the Zelda games were for a long time. Mm-hmm. That I guess I feel like that's what actual real Zelda is. And then eventually Ocarina of Time came out, and so I've always had a hard time feeling like the 3D Zeldas are truly Zelda games. Mm-hmm. because they're very different gameplay wise. And do you see where I'm going with that?
100%. And not only do I agree, when I was playing Breath of the Wild, I was at the desert boss. I don't want to give spoilers away. I mean, it's a few months old, but and towards the end, it was getting really frustrating. So I left. I did it out of order. I know there's not a real order, but not the suggested order. I finished off another boss. I came back, and It's the two things that really get me with the newer games, and the simplicity of the old games, right? So Super Nintendo, 4 buttons, 2 triggers, so easy to get used to that. And there's a couple of times I need to like run and aim, and I end up ducking at the same time because I'm excited and I'm pressing down, and that drives me insane. And there's no way to disable it. And the other thing is the feeling of those other games is, I mean, to say it's top down is true, but you're looking down at your character and you're planning out the attack and you're seeing where it's going, and like, and even in the crazy ones like Link to the Past, that boss, that like snake thing that always just turns into circles,
the
Moldorm. Yeah, that was really challenging. But even though it was top down and you get to see the whole thing, I mean, it was still really hard. You have to figure out the pattern. And, when you're running around, if it was real life or VR, if you could hear somebody behind you or you could turn your head around, but you're playing the game, you're trying to get all these controls, you're trying to spin around, you're getting attacked from behind, it's a completely different feel. And I'm not trying to say that one's better than the other. I just, that top down, the whole experience feels completely different.
And I agree. One isn't better than the other, and but it is a different experience, and I think that because it's a different gameplay style experience is probably why I feel like it's not true Zelda, because it's a different style of gameplay, and I'm used to the classic style. So
but that being said, a kid nowadays might go back and love A Link to the Past, but say this isn't true Zelda. True Zelda's Breath of the Wild, what I grew up with. So.
Right, and that's probably just it's probably just all due to my age, and what I'm used to. But I do love Breath of the Wild though, and in its own way, I love, like, you're playing that game and you're going around and I love like climbing through the mountains in that game, and you're collecting like pieces of like limestone and stuff like that, and you're cooking food, and the game is absolutely beautiful. It has a lot of problems. I'm not going to get into like the little things that annoy me about it, but it really it's like they didn't quite get it just right, but it's like they're almost there. I feel like if they could take Breath of the Wild and just make it a little bit more like classic Zelda and fix a couple things, they'd really have something. I want to see like Breath of the Wild 2.0 or something. Breath of the Wild 2. I can't wait to see the next one, and I hope that they can make it a little closer to classic Zelda, and then you'd really, really, really have something. But it is a great game, and I played a lot of it, and I haven't played it in a little while. But I've been yearning now. It's been a while since I played it. Now I kind of want to play it again. Yeah,
I'm still stuck with that boss, so I figure I step aside for a while. I'll go hit up a bunch of the shrines and get a million hearts. Which, that's not a complaint of that game, because there's a ton of games throughout history where if you can't beat the boss, you have to just wander around the world getting hearts again and stuff. So, the one thing that really I thought was very neat about it, though, because in my opinion, it's the best of all the 3D Zeldas. But there are a lot of times when we'd play a game, like I remember in Mario 64, looking up at the top of a building or something and just thinking like, geez, I wonder what's up there. I wonder if you can go up there. I wonder if they hit anything up there. And then, you either couldn't get to it or there's nothing there. And in Zelda, you can get pretty much everywhere. And even if there's nothing there waiting for you, maybe it'll allow you to swing down to a different level that you hadn't seen. So it really did feel like you could actually just explore if you wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. Like you get to Hyrule Castle and you can like just climb the walls, and you're almost like Spider-Man in the game, and you can, exactly. You can get to the top of a mountain and maybe there's nothing there, but when you get up there, it's a nice view. If nothing else, you can look around and then exactly. You can jump off of it and you can glide down to another location where there might be a cave that you go into, and it's a great exploration experience, and it is a really good Zelda game. It's just I feel like it's not perfect, but it's really good.
I think just disabling the crouch. If I could just, every time I went into a place where I knew there was going to be action, if I could disable crouch, I would like it even more, a million times more, just because so many times I'll get excited. And, I'm a big dude with big hands. It's very easy for me to push that button accidentally. So it's like, little things I wish they would tweak about it.
I can't, I have a really hard time. I can't use this. I remember I went on a trip and I tried to play it with the actual system. I don't play it on the system because I have to use the Wii controller because it's a bigger controller. I'm also I have a hard time with the smaller controls.
Yeah, my hands cramp up really bad when I use certain.
Yeah,
things.
it's like I think that it's meant for a kid to hold, not for an adult. So maybe they need to make the adult size Switch or something.
Or just somebody come up with a really cool hand grip for it or something.
Yeah.
So, what, I guess anybody that's kind of known any of the Cinemassacre stuff, so I guess you met James, the angry video game nerd, in college, and then you guys did that first video. But what kind of was like the in-between part? You guys met, became friends, and then he made that silly video, which turned out to be the start of something awesome. But, what was going on between that? Were you just continuing to play games, or did you try to work in the gaming industry at all?
So I went to college, and for James and I went to the same college, met in college. He went for film, I went for animation, and with that, I grew up, like I said before, we were talking about Pac-Man and all that stuff, and I grew up loving cartoons. I wanted to be an animator, but the kind of animation I love, I love Bugs Bunny cartoons and that kind of stuff, the old 1940s, 1950s animation, and they would play a lot of that on TV in the 80s. So, and then there was like Ren and Stimpy and stuff. So that feeling of like that's still alive was there. But I went to college at a time when everything was changing. Everything was going from traditional to computers. Everything was going like the Pixar movies were now out. Like traditional animation was going away, and 3D animation was more prevalent, and I like watching Toy Story and all that. That's fine, but it's not the type of animation that I want to make. So a lot of that stuff I love was going away, and then I had done a few animated things in college, and realizing when you can love it, and I like to draw and stuff, but realizing how much work it is to do animation was kind of I thought that like, oh my god, I can handle a lot, because I would always draw like every day, but animation is really a lot of work, and so I was animating several different things in college, and then basically to have a character, like you have Luigi here, and then Luigi's got to start here, and then he's got to end up over here, and then you have to draw every single frame to get him from here to here. It's kind of like it's enjoyable to a point, but when you're making an entire cartoon, it gets to be a lot of work. And I came to the realization where I like story as well, and the creative process. And when you're spending a week getting this character from here to here, I feel there's not much creativity there in terms of storytelling or writing or comedy or anything, because you're just getting this guy from here to here. So I started to decide that I think I would rather do comics, because in a comic you draw one panel, and then the next panel you don't have to draw all that in between stuff, and you can tell the story quicker. So I started to feel like I wanted to get into doing either try to get into doing like traditional comics, like maybe do like a newspaper comic or something like that, something like a Garfield type of thing. But at the same time, I was also into a lot of underground comics. I was a big fan of R. Crumb and other comic artists like that. So I wanted to get into that scene. So I was messing around with that for a while, and then from there, at the same time, James was working on like The Deader the Better, I think, and he was working on he had completed his senior film and all that, and that's where the Angry Video Game Nerd comes from, because he was working for a really long time. It was we were like both frustrated artists that like nothing was going anywhere, and it was prior to YouTube, because he was working really hard on, you know, I had worked really hard on all this animation stuff and these comics and all that stuff, and he's working really hard on like, oh, he's making this Twilight Zone sort of thing, or he's making this and spending a year on it, or he's making this low budget zombie thing and you know, spending a year on it, and then you make it and then you put it out there in the world and nobody cares, and like 2 people look at it and you're like, wow, I spent a year working on this and now 3 people looked at it, and it's a little bit disheartening because you put so much time and effort. And I think that a lot of animators can relate to this because you work so hard on something. And I feel really bad for animators these days on YouTube because somebody can upload a video of their cat and the cat video will get 1 million views. Yeah. And an animator can work for a year on a project, and it can be beautifully animated, and you put it out there and it gets 10,000 views or something, and it's this beautiful piece of art, and then the cat video has 1 million views on it. It's kind of like, well, I like cats. The cat's funny, but it's like I worked for a year on this thing. You know, it's kind of unfair in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of the same with musicians too. You know, you get that band like Mutiny Within from Jersey, right? They're phenomenal musicians, you know, and next thing you know, you get like, you know, Rebecca Black Friday, you know, some chick that just, you know, sang one line over and over, and she's got millions of views, and Mutiny Within's got to quit because they're only making $10,000 a year each or something like that. So it's, you know, it's any kind of artistry at all is frustrating, you know.
Yeah, getting paid is also part of the thing because, you know, you work for such a long time, then you start equating it to like, okay, I worked for a year to make this 2-minute long animation, and maybe you get paid $1,000 for it. Well, if you work for a year at your local fast food place, you'd be making a lot more money than that. So it's kind of like you got to kind of choose your battles here, you know. So a lot of times what happens is you have to just do that kind of stuff as a hobby or for fun. So, and I think that there's a lot of people out there that want to get into music or want to get into animation or want to get into comedy or whatever, maybe for the wrong reasons, because I found a lot of people just want the instant fame part of it, like the notoriety of it, without having to go through all the work and everything.
Yeah,
and
that's 99.9% of all musicians I've ever worked with would show up because they loved the idea of being in a band. They loved the idea of playing songs. And it's like, all right, did you learn the album? No. Well, why are you here?
I think what you have to do is you have to go get yourself a regular job. You got to remember, you know, James and I worked at a liquor store for years. So did James. He used to work at Wawa. I worked a bunch of crappy jobs, and we both worked a bunch of, you know, jobs for a while. And the Angry Video Game Nerd stuff, when we did the first season, I was working at a liquor store. And then we had a job together for a little while where we were editing industrial training videos and stuff, and we didn't get paid. The first, few season, at least of the Nerd, there was no money involved whatsoever. We didn't get anything. We were doing it because it was fun and we liked doing it. And it was like, we can play these video games and make these creative, funny little quirky little video game videos and put them out there. And it was really exciting because then you have the people watching, and they're because we had worked so hard on so many projects that nobody cared about and nobody looked at. So you make something, you put it out there, and now you have 1,000 people commenting. It's like, this is awesome. Let's do more of this because people care about this. So that was what was rewarding. We didn't get paid for a long time. So
finding some project, anything at all, and bringing it to completion and having somebody else give a shit is a really great feeling, even if it's on a very small scale. So
absolutely,
yeah, completely understand. So when did it start to get to the point where you guys were like, holy shit, like we gotta really spend more time doing this? This is starting to take off.
Pretty quickly into doing the Nerd series. I think the turning point came with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle video, which is like episode 5, because we had which is extremely early on, because it was one of those things that was like an overnight, like boom, this thing blew up. It was very, very quick, and we had the first few videos on there, and they were getting a lot of views and a lot of comments and whatever. But then it was like, okay, let's do another one specifically. Like, it was like the first new one, because those had already been made prior to YouTube. It was the first. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the first one that was made, knowing that there was fans here that wanted to see a new one. Then we put that one out, and then that one blew up too. And then it was like, okay, now we're gonna be doing this all the time. And then there was a lot happened very quickly. But at the same time, like I said before, there was no money involved in any of it for a long time. In fact, James had a website that he created back in college, which was Cinemassacre.com, and he was paying for the website just out of his own pocket. And when the Nerd series started, his bills for the website went through the roof, because now you went from 10 people visiting the website, a week, to a million, literally like a million people coming to the website. And he was getting these gigantic bills in the mail and not making any money. So he was paying his day job. He was paying just money from his day job to keep the website going. And that went on for a long time, until it was several years where he was getting these gigantic bills, until we figured out how to make money on a website. Like, how does that even work? And going back to 2005 and 2006, like, we didn't know, how to do any of that stuff. So it took a long time, and it was really a labor of love for a long time. Like, we're doing this thing, but not really making much. So yeah, it took us a long time to like get it all to work. So yeah, but
yeah, there's always those moments, right, when you're really going for something where it's just like, man, this is so much fun, but like the dollar menu again, like maybe I should just go get another job. Like,
yeah. So, but then the first thing that happened was when James got to go onto GameTrailers, because what happened was, there was no YouTube partner program. There was not even ads on YouTube. I don't know if people remember, like, there didn't even used to be ads on YouTube if you go back to 2005, 2006. There weren't ads before videos and things like that. So at that time, it was either kind of stop doing this angry video game thing because it's taking too much time and costing too much money, or get paid for it and then keep doing it. So because of the GameTrailers website, they offered James, hey, we'll pay you to make these videos. So he started putting them on there. And then there was it was the contract said that we couldn't put them on YouTube for a year, which we did. So that first year, it was like a while before we could eventually post them there. And that's how it was for a while. So when a new nerd video would come out on GameTrailers, we put a trailer to the video on GameTrailers on YouTube, and then people would go over to GameTrailers, and then that lasted 4 years or something that we were on GameTrailers. So, but at that point, it had sort of become a job, and it was like do two a month, I think it was, for a while, and then eventually it became one a month, because he started to want to make the movie, so he needed more time to work on the movie. And
so at least by that point, were you guys able to dial back your day jobs, or did you still have to work like a full 40-hour week and do this stuff?
For James, it was a lot quicker, because he was getting paid to make the videos, and I was just helping him out. For me, it took many years before that happened. So I wasn't making anything off of it for a long time. My involvement, even though I was helping out, obviously, in the nerd videos, and I'm Jason Voorhees and all that, for me, it was just like fun. I'd show up and I'd help out. I'd play the games with them, whatever. But
make fake poop on the floor.
all that stuff. Well, that came a little bit later. But he said to me, he came to me. He was really excited, and this is when the Nerd series was early on. And he's like, I really want to do a thing in October where I want to talk about the history of horror movies, but it would be a ton of work, and I'm trying to do all this angry video game nerd stuff. But I really want to do it, but I don't know. I don't think I'm going to do it because it's going to be too much work, and I can't balance. And I'm having a job at the same time. He can't. Too much to do. And I said to him, I'm like, it sounds like a really awesome idea. I think you should pile through it and try to do it, try to get it done. And that was the first year of Monster Madness. And James was making the nerd videos. He was working a job, and he did all of Monster Madness that first year. And he told me that that was probably the hardest he ever worked. And he didn't sleep for a month, really, a couple hours here and there. So, but he got the first Monster Madness done. And after that, I said, well, I watched it and I was like, wow, that was, your Monster Madness was so awesome. Are you going to do it next year? And he's like, oh God, no, I'm never doing that again. And I'm like, oh, that's upsetting. That's too bad. I was like, well, if you were ever going to do it again, what would you do? And he's like, well, I always wanted to review all the Godzilla movies. And then I was like, well, if you wrote it and voiced it, what if I edited the entire thing? And then we could do it next year too. And this is all unpaid. This is just because we wanted to make it and we like horror movies. And he's like, well, if you edited it, that would definitely cut down on 60% of the work. So yeah, if you want to do that, but he's like kind of warned me. He's like, it would be a ton of work. And anyway, so we decided to do it, and I edited the Godzilla-thon videos, and that took me like 7 months of work to edit Godzilla-thon. And that was 2008, and that was my first major thing that I did with Cinemassacre. Even though I had done things before, that was like my first huge project. And then from there, I started editing Monster Madness every year until like the last couple of years, like the last 3 years of Monster Madness, James edited most of it, but for about like 7 years of it, I was editing it. But he always wrote them all. So that was really for a long time my major thing I was doing. I was helping edit Monster Madness. And through that process, I learned so much from James, and because it's different when you watch a video compared to editing a video, because because you capture you watch them. I would, if he was reviewing Dracula or something, then I would watch the movie, because I didn't want to just like edit it and not know what I was doing. I would watch the movie if I hadn't seen it, and then I would capture the movie, or a lot of times I would capture the movie and watch it at the same time. And then when he would talk, then I would know what he was talking about because I had just watched the movie. And then I would go in and I would edit the whole thing. And really, I worked really hard on that. And I tried to make it as good as I could with the editing and all that. And now we weren't able to put any of that stuff on YouTube because it's all movie clips and everything. So now we're slowly like re-releasing a lot of the old movie reviews, but with just still frames, because it's what you got to do, kind of. Yeah. So
I gotta ask, because now I feel a little guilty about something. Did you guys ever have a deal with JustinTV, which was now Twitch, of course?
No.
So I discovered
I know
you guys.
exactly what you're going to say. They used to stream all the nerd episodes and all the Monster Madness stuff and all that. And yeah, that was not my favorite thing that was happening.
Oh, that sucks so much. That's how we discovered you guys. My friend Justin, we used to have this tech area in the back of my work, and I would occasionally have to go back there to work on projects. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of not even paying attention, and I just hear somebody scream out, "That's a shitload of fuck!" And I went, "What? What is this?" And I ran over, and we were hooked. We had that on repeat, the whole thing.
I mean, there's sort of a scale there, as in like, it sucks because I'd rather people watch the videos on our channel or watch them on our website. But at the same time, like, if you guys are watching our videos, first of all, if you're watching our videos, that's fantastic, regardless of whether you're watching them on our website or watching them on somebody else's website or something. It's still good because you're watching our content. I still remember like I said, I would work for a year on something and nobody would look at it. So if you guys are watching our stuff, it's kind of like, well, okay, they're not watching our site, but they're watching it. So
yeah, I mean, yes and no. I kind of disagree a little bit because you guys weren't charging for your content.
We don't charge for. We never.
Well, yeah, but like my favorite band on the planet is In Flames from Sweden, and I would have never found out about those guys if my friend didn't burn me a CD. And then I loved it, so he burned me 2 others, and then I bought everything that they put out and seen them live like 24 times or something like that. So because I stole their shit, yeah. But you were never selling anything, so we could have been watching your videos on the channel that you were getting paid for.
Yeah. Well,
that's the thing that pisses me off.
We sell stuff now because we put our stuff on DVD, but it's sort of a weird thing because all of our content is available online. Mm-hmm. But I think it's more of a thing of like if you love something, you buy it kind of anyway. Yeah, because and then there's bonus features that are only available on the discs and stuff. But it's kind of like when I buy stuff. Like, if I wanted to watch some horror movie, I could probably find it like for free online or something. But
I'd rather support the people that
exactly.
I think I have it here. I didn't plan that. I swear to God, I didn't plan that.
Yeah,
you got AVGN right there. I've seen every episode, but of course, I want to support the people who's making the great content. But
yeah, it's been a lot of work to get those out. That's been a whole nother thing over the last years because it's not easy to make a Blu-ray and to get it out there and get it on sale and whatever that's a whole sort of behind the scenes thing that happens with us is all the merchandise and stuff because we deal with that every single day. In fact, we're working on the next one right now and it's always a big process and I know a lot of people are a little upset about the Blu-rays but I think some people don't really understand what's going on with them. So when James shot Angry Video Game Nerd, he shot them all on an SD camera up until episode 104 or something like that, 102, whatever it was. So the first about 100 episodes are all in standard definition. So when it came time for us to do a Blu-ray, we could fit like a ton of episodes on there because they were all standard definition. They weren't big files. Mm-hmm. So we did. We put as many on there as we could. But then as soon as it went to HD, the file size is a lot bigger. So there's way less episodes on X2 and X3, and we're working on 4. So I can understand, you get the first one, it's like, wow, 100 episodes. And then you get the next one, and it's like, oh, there's like 8 episodes on this one. It kind of sucks, but it's like,
people were upset about that, though?
I kind of get it because, the first product, it's like you get 100 episodes. The next one you get like 10 or something. It kind of stinks. But at the same time, you have to understand it's like math. It's like that's as much as we can fit on the disc. If we could put more, we would.
Or the choice would be to wait, put more on it, and then have a much more expensive product because now you'd have to include multiple discs, bigger custom packaging.
Or multi-layered disc, and then it would be more expensive and whatever. So it's like we put as many on there as we can. So I hope that people understand that's why,
Well, I mean, no matter what anybody does, somebody's going to be pissed. So
yeah, it's like that's life, right?
Yep. So now you're working on Cinemassacre Plays. So now there was a couple things I wanted to ask you about that because I kind of overworked myself the past couple of years. So when I have extra time, I'll throw on one of your videos, but I haven't followed exactly. So you do certain things where you'll sit there and you'll play through and win an entire game.
I try.
Get to the end, and that's pretty much what Cinemassacre Plays is centered around, correct?
To a degree. Yeah, I do. I have a thing. I do like to play games and attempt to beat them. I'm not a speedrunner. I don't really. There's plenty of speedrunners out there that do that. And the thing about, I think, the majority of speedrunners is they get really good at a couple games and then they play them over and over and over and they're really good. I'm not like that. I like to always play a different game. Mm-hmm. So when I beat a game, I might take a really long time to beat it, but I power through it and try to beat it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get through the games, but not quickly. but it's not just about that. So on Cinemassacre Plays, which is our second channel, we it's essentially where we do live streams, and it's not only about beating games. Sometimes I'll pop in any game and just play it just to play it. So really, it's just about interacting with people and fans. I really like playing games and having people help me out or talk to people while playing.
So that's your live streams then, which is a little separate, right?
Yeah. Yes. So Cinemassacre Plays is where the live streams are, because I didn't want to just throw 8 million live streams on the main channel. The main channel is mostly for edited content. Mm-hmm. Occasionally there might be a stream on there or something if it's a special circumstance, but 99% the live streams are on Cinemassacre Plays, and it's mostly just playing whatever game. Like, I might throw in Super Mario Brothers and play it and whatever, and just be screwing around or something. It's not necessarily about beating it, but sometimes I will play a game and try and attempt to beat a hard game or something like that. But with the really, really tough games, like if you take Ghost and Goblins or something like that, I made another show essentially, and that I call it full playthroughs, which is not a live stream. It's just me playing through the game and attempting to beat it on my own, because I will practice the game a lot. So I will just sit and play through a game and try to beat it on my own without recording anything. And then once I get good enough at the game, and I'm like, okay, I think I can beat it now, or I've beaten it once or twice, now I feel practiced and good, then I'll turn all the cameras on and I'll start recording. And sometimes even that, I'll do 2 or 3 of those recordings to try to get a really good one. And then that will be the full playthrough video.
Because it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and it takes sometimes days or weeks for some of these games. I remember I did Contra 3: The Alien Wars, and I was playing that game for probably a good week, just over and over and over and over until I was like, okay, because first of all I beat the game on easy. And then I beat it on normal, and then finally I'm like, all right, I got to do hard. And then the difference between hard and normal is it's like easy, normal, hard. It's because it's a big gap, and hard is. I think that might be the most difficult game that I've beaten is Contra 3. For me, it's different for different people. I don't know if you know do you know the Mexican Runner?
Yeah.
I've talked to him before, and he has a list of games that he considers to be the hardest, and his list is quite a bit different than mine. He thought, I can't remember exactly, but let's say I might have had a really hard time beating Castlevania 3, and he's like, oh, that one's not that hard. But then at the same time, I'm like, oh, I beat Punch Out or something, and he's like, oh my god, that's the hardest game ever. I'm like, so it depends on the person. Actually, Punch Out actually is one of the harder ones for me. That's very, very difficult. But yeah, that's essentially what I do, because I can't just turn on a game like Dragon's Lair and beat it without practicing, because you have to memorize. Oh, and that's another one. I spent a week or something, I don't even know, memorizing, okay, here you have to duck, then you got to immediately stand up, then you got to take 1 step to the right, then you got to jump, then you got to take 2 steps, then you got to jump, then you got to duck, then you got to jump over the thing.
For a lot of these, because from the first time I watched any of your playthroughs, I immediately realized you're way better at these games than I'll ever be. So is that a lot of your secret for a lot of it, is just memorizing the steps and trying to get your patterns down?
It's a lot of not giving up. It's a lot of sitting down and playing it, and then you get through the first level and you're like, all right, and then you get to try the next level, and then you might die, and then most people right there would be like, all right, I've had enough, I give up. It's not giving up. It's like, okay, I made it through that, let me put it on pause, let me go take a break, I'm gonna come back to it, Now I'm going to work on it again and again and again. Not for 10 minutes, not for 30 minutes, like all day long. The whole day is going to be me trying to beat level 2 if I'm having that hard of a time with it and I do it again and again and again and again and again until I know what the hell I'm doing. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm good at this level 2, and then I get to level 3 and I'm like, okay, crap, now I got to do the same thing again. So it's a ton of practice. I put in like a lot of off-screen hours practicing. Like I said, like I'll work for like a week just practicing until I finally turn the cameras on. I was actually surprised. I just did it for Silver Surfer, and I thought that was going to be by far like probably the hardest because a lot of people consider that to be like the hardest Nintendo game. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it took me like 2 attempts, and I beat it. And then I started recording the cameras because I was confident enough that I could beat it. That game's really rough on your hand. You have to tap and tap and tap and tap, but like, it's not. I didn't think it was as hard as people quite make it out to be. At least, but there you go again. That's for me. For somebody else, that might be the hardest game ever made. I had a much harder time beating Contra 3 than I did Silver Surfer. So
how many tries about for Contra 3 did you end up doing?
A lot. I think I kind of suck at it is the thing. And you watch my video and it might look like I'm pretty good at it because I'm beating it and I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I did.
But that's after like a shit ton of hours of me practicing it. You have to understand that.
Yeah, I remember talking to you on Skype about that, and it took a while to grasp what it was that you were doing, because I just assumed, like an idiot, that you were just doing live streams of stuff, and that when you were talking about putting out, well, yeah, but with the Contra specifically, and you were talking to me about, the different takes, and that you had noticed a few things in the video capture, and I was just like, do you rewatch all of these? And you're like, yeah, of course, and I didn't understand at the moment that's what you were doing, is you were essentially, you were doing the story of a video game. You were practicing it, playing it start to finish, and I mean, that's pretty freaking awesome. That's I like them both. I'm a fan of live streams. It's like listening to the radio. You leave them on in the background, and you hear something cool, you look over, like, oh, that's neat. But I also I'd sit on my couch and watch that. I'd have a football game on, and then that, on my iPad or something, so I could. I mean, that's pretty freaking awesome to be able to sit there and go through and see like a pro play through a game. I don't consider myself a pro whatsoever. It's because, okay, so I beat Dragon's Lair, right? Mm-hmm. If I was a pro, I could beat Dragon's Lair right now. I can't. If I was a pro, I could beat Mike Tyson's Punch Out right now. I can't. If I have to put in all this practice, and then once I'm done, once the video is recorded, and then it's like a week or 2 later, I don't remember anymore. You asked me the pattern right now on Piston Honda or something. I'm like, I don't know, because I have to practice it again. I have to go back. Okay, what was it? Oh yeah, that's how you beat that guy. I would have to spend more time and do it again. Because another thing I've been trying is, and that might just be because I have a bad memory, but like really, really good players that are better than me can pick up Mike Tyson's Punch Out and beat it every time because they're really good at it. Mm-hmm. I have to practice beforehand. If I don't have that practice, it's done. So I have another thing. I want to also be good I want to have 1 or 2 games that I can beat at any time. So one of those games that I practice, like I try to play it like if I can once a week, is Ninja Gaiden 3, because I would like to always be able to be like, okay, I know if anybody asks me, I could beat Ninja Gaiden 3 right now at any time. But if I haven't played it for 6 months, I'm probably not going to be able to beat it. Yeah.
So that's the thing.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So for the Zelda Swordless run, then that was just, that, because when I first watched that, I was like, holy shit, how the hell do you do this? How do you get the dark nuts with just bombs and not run out of bombs? Like that was so impressive to watch.
I'm still learning things about Zelda to this day. I did the Zelda randomizer stream, and that's one of the things I love about having the chat there and having people talk to me is like I might know a lot about Zelda, but there's still things that I don't know, and people in the chat will be like, oh, In fact, I just did a stream of Zelda Randomizer, and I was going through the overworld map, and somebody during the stream said, "Hey, bomb on this part of the screen." I never knew until last week or something that there was a place on the map that you can bomb, that there's a cave that you can bomb and get money, that I never knew my whole life. So it's 2017. I'm still learning new things about fucking Legend of Zelda from 1986. It's like amazing. Because you'd think by now I know everything.
Randomizer, though, because all those things that you've learned since your childhood are different. Like, how did it feel playing that? Was it annoying and frustrating?
No, because not at all. I love it because it's like playing Zelda for the first time, which is the best thing ever. You ever you watch your favorite movie? What's your favorite movie?
Oh God, there's too many.
Or what's one of your favorite movies?
Like Terminator 2 or something, probably.
So you've seen Terminator 2 a bunch, right? Mm-hmm. So imagine if you could take a pill and then watch that makes you only forget Terminator 2. Now you've never seen Terminator 2. And then you can watch it again and experience it fresh. You can't do that for a movie. I would love to be able to take a pill, and the pill is like the forget Star Wars pill, and then rewatch Star Wars for the first time, because it's that first time experience being like, oh, I actually don't know that Darth Vader is Luke's father, and you could experience that again for the first time. So Zelda Randomizer does that for Zelda. It's like I can play Zelda essentially for the first time. I mean, there's still a lot of things that are similar about it, but it's like it's putting things in different areas and it's changing the monsters and stuff, and it's making it like 80% new again, and it's so awesome. I love Zelda Randomizer, and I would only stream Zelda Randomizer, but people get bored of it. In fact, I did like 3 or 4 streams of it or something that went on for hours and hours and hours and hours, and people were like, all right, Mike, play a different game. I don't blame them either.
But didn't you end up beating it at the end?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's incredible. Did you find spots in that where like you had to use tricks because, or did everything was it equal in hardness to the original? Just you didn't know where anything was.
I would say it was probably mostly equal in hardness to Zelda, although the original game is very set up specifically, where this is kind of like they might put something in a location because it's random that is really inconvenient. Mm-hmm. Like I got lucky when I was playing that I got the magic key early on, which if you get the magic key early on, it makes the whole thing like way easier. But the second time I played through the game, I couldn't get the bow or something until really late in the game, and then finally I found it. But there's certain things like if you want to kill Goma, mm-hmm. you can't kill him without the bow. Right, and I started encountering all these Gomas, the spider with the eye for people that don't know, and I couldn't beat any of the Gomas. So if I can't beat the Goma, I can't get through the room, or I can't get the heart piece, or I can't do this and I can't do that. So when you play the original game, I know that the bow is in level 1, and even if you've never played the game, it's pretty like there's the tree. You're gonna like go into the tree and search the level, and you're probably gonna find the bow relatively easily. Mm-hmm. Where in this game, it's like the bow could like be anywhere. It could like you could kill a random enemy in some cave in the mountain, and there's the bow. It's like, oh well, who would ever know that? Mm-hmm. So it's harder than the actual game, depending on the settings that you pick.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, it's really good.
I really want to try that with A Link to the Past and Super Metroid. I'm not great at either of those games, but I love them both. So
yeah, I'm not very good at Super Metroid. I'm just like an average player at it, so it would be harder for me to do Super Metroid. But there is a Zelda 2 randomizer, and there's a Link to the Past randomizer, and I plan to do them eventually when I get to them. But I have a whole queue of things that I want to do coming up, so it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, do you think you would do something like that continuing as a live stream, or more of like a polished Cinemassacre Plays video?
For what specifically?
For, I mean, any of those other randomizers, did you more enjoy doing it live and kind of having people hang out?
That would be I would do that on a live stream, because that can take me, 6, 7, 8 hours or something to do that. So that's I think that's more suited for a live stream. The full playthroughs are more like, if I can't beat it in like maximum like 2 or 3 hours, I'm probably not going to make like, some people want me to do a full playthrough of like Dark Souls, but the video would be like 100 hours long, It's like, I'm not, for me it would be 100 hours long. Yeah, so it's not that I couldn't do it. If I was going to beat Dark Souls, I would do it on a series of live streams. I wouldn't make it a full playthrough. I feel like full playthrough is good, like if I want to beat Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and I can do it in 45 minutes or something, So that's more the way I think of it, yeah.
So I gotta ask, because it's RetroRGB channel. What's your setup like these days? Because I think some of the only things that ever frustrated me about you guys' videos was just the nerd end to it.
Yeah.
Like, I remember my cousin Scott and I were laughing because the angry video game nerd, when you guys had the Atari episode where he said, "Oh, I can't even use this because the end's cut off." Like, I used to cut those off as a kid and twist them together so that you'd have a better connection to the TV. So I always wondered, like, the actual nerd portion of things. Like, are you guys upgrading your equipment? Are you getting a little more brushed up on some of the, the actual nerdy shit behind all this?
I'm probably a little bit more into that than James is. I usually we'll figure something out most of the time, and then I'll let James know about it, and then like later on at some point we'll upgrade his stuff if he wants to do it, if he feels like spending the money on it. So I'm a little bit more personally into all that, but I'm not like as much into it as you. I could understand you or somebody who's really into that aspect of it watching our stuff and being like, oh, well, why don't they do this, or why don't they do that? Why don't they plug their controller in this way, because it's better that way, or something like that. You have to realize that at least with Angry Video Game Nerd, or even James and Mike Monday, our goal with that is not like to have the perfect hookup and setup and everything. Although, yeah, a lot of times it can be probably frustrating if you're watching one of our videos and we're sitting there bitching about some controller or something not working right, and you're like, well, if you just do this, then your problem's solved. You have to remember that, like, we're making a show. It's kind of for entertainment value, and it's more for, like, Angry Video Game Nerd is a little bit like, we want you to laugh at it, and if we also don't want to get things wrong, but we do the best we can in that moment with what we know. If we get something wrong, well, we get something wrong because we didn't know something. But it's like, what I'm trying to say, it's like that's not really the goal. It's more like, make this entertaining video. We might get a fact or two wrong in there, sure. Sorry, we're probably always going to get some kind of fact wrong, but that's not the goal. The goal is like, did you watch the video and did you enjoy it and did you have a couple laughs? If you did, then we did what we set out to do. And if we said, on stage 8 that there's a guy with a purple face, but we were wrong, he actually has a red face, well, I'm sorry. Gotcha. So you know what I mean? That's sort of the goal. And when you watch James and Mike Mondays, that's more, I feel like, about the relationship between me and James. It's like two friends shooting the shit.
It's almost like a podcast over video games, really. I mean, that as a compliment too. I mean, that's cool. I like that.
Exactly. And I know that a lot of people watch it and they just listen to us talking, and a lot of people aren't even looking at the screen. Mm-hmm. It's probably 20% of the people that watch it are actually watching it with their eyes. A lot of the people just have it playing in the background, and I recognize that. There are a lot of Let's Plays and things like that out there now, and I think a lot of them tend to be just talking about anything, where with James and Mike Mondays, I will say we go off on a lot of tangents. Like, we might be playing Splatterhouse, and then next thing you know, we're talking about George Lucas or something. I know we do like a lot of that kind of stuff, where it has nothing to do with the game we're playing, but we do attempt to always bring it back to talking about the game that we're on, even if we go on tangents.
Yeah, but it's called James and Mike Mondays. I mean, it's just my opinion. You guys get millions of followers, but I mean, to me, when I see James and Mike Mondays, it's like listening to a podcast that two friends hang out and play a video game. So you talk about whatever.
Yeah,
but to the opposite of that, like for your Contra playthrough, like if you started talking about Darth Vader for an hour, it's like, all right, dude, say that for the podcast. Like we're watching Contra. Like, it's two different things.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So I don't know. We do the best we can. That's all. I don't know what to say.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so I'll link to both channels in the description. So there's obviously the Cinemassacre YouTube channel and Cinemassacre Plays. And are you guys up? Like, do you have a favorite social media other than YouTube that you'd rather have people follow you at, or are you just kind of spread out across all of them?
Well, we have our Twitters. James, is Cinemassacre on Twitter. I'm, Mike Matei on Twitter. We have that, and we have our Facebook fan page, which is just the Cinemassacre fan page. If you're looking for us on social media, but mainly if you want to find us, we're cinemassacre.com, the website, and on YouTube it's Cinemassacre and Cinemassacre Plays. Yep.
Gotcha. So you get something coming up next, something to tease for people to expect in the next couple of days?
Okay. So I want to try to beat Superman 64, but because I asked my chat and I asked some people, I said, what do you guys want to see me play and beat? And a lot of people said to me Superman 64. So I'm like, okay. So I played the game, and I hadn't played it for years, and it's so bad. So I don't know if I'm going to do it for a full playthrough, or if I'm going to do it for a live stream or something. So you might see me playing some of that. I also started a lot of games recently. I started Mario Rabbids, and I started playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and I started playing what was the other thing? Star Wars Rogue Squadron. So I started playing all these games, and I had all these things that I want to do, and I kind of have too many things I'm trying to do, and I need to kind of focus on one thing. So I have a tough time with sticking to one thing.
Yeah, me too.
And that might be my upbringing with going back to the beginning. We talked about Atari. As a kid, you take an Atari game, you put it into the Atari, you flip it on, you play it for a little bit, you take it out, you put it in the next Atari game. That's kind of always my thing. I'm always like, okay, I just did a 2-hour live stream of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. In a perfect world, the next video would be part 2 of me playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and then I continue playing. But what happens is that I'm done doing that, and then I'm like, now I want to play Silver Surfer. And then I play Silver Surfer, and now I'm like, oh, I forgot. Oh, wasn't I playing that Mario game? Oh, now I'm going to play this. Now I'm going to play that. So I'm kind of a mess. I'm just always playing something different. So I have a hard
keep putting them out, though. As long as you don't leave everybody hanging for good, I think that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. So, thanks a lot for everything. And I don't. Before we go, I feel like I didn't necessarily answer your question entirely, though, because you were asking about my setup and everything currently, and your channel at RetroRGB. Is there anything specific? Because I did a whole video. If you want to know about my setup, I did a video called Mike's RGB SCART setup video or something like that. That pretty much shows the majority of my setup. And you and other people that I know have helped me out within the last year, because growing up, I with the NES, my NES for a long time was was hooked up RF, and it had composite, and when I went from RF to composite, I was like, wow, this is awesome! It looks so much better. So I was satisfied with composite for a long time, and finally, when I started seeing games with like HDMI and stuff, it started to look better. But man, I do have to say that now having this medical monitor that I have and the SCART and the RGB, it is very hard for me to go back and look at composite and other things now that I have. So now I'm spoiled.
Yeah, if you'd never got to see how good it looks, you might have never cared. But then you play something on like a nice RGB monitor, especially something like a Super Nintendo, which looks amazing, and then you go back and you play it through RF or composite, and it's like, oh, that sucks.
And I also have to say this: it wasn't instantaneous. It took a while for me to because I started playing the stuff on the RGB and all that, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can see that it looks better. But then after I start playing it for months and months and months, and then I'm like really getting used to it. Mm-hmm. Then I go back and I see a game with composite. Now I look at it, I'm like, oh my god, I can't even look at this anymore. So yeah, it is a big difference. But I do have to say this, I don't think people should feel like they have to have an RGB setup. If all you have is a composite or something like that, you know what? In the 80s, I enjoyed all those games. I used to play Legend of Zelda and Mario Brothers, and I didn't have all the equipment that I have now. You can enjoy the games just as much like that.
I agree 100%. The only thing I have to say, though, is you need those games were designed to be played on CRTs, so you need as low a lag scenario as possible. So I'm not saying you have to get a CRT, but if you just go get a junk brand TV, and you could find real cheap ones, I'm not saying you need to spend $1 million, but if you just buy a crappy TV and you leave it in cinema mode and you try to play Super Mario Brothers, it's gonna suck. Everything about it's gonna suck. So lag is way more important.
I do agree that you should try to, if you can, try to do it on a CRT monitor. But I was talking more about hooking up the difference between composite and RGB and SCART, which that all also requires a lot of special equipment. So because for a long time, we would be doing the videos and people were like, when are you going to make the upgrade to RGB and SCART and all that? The thing about it is it's also very expensive. You have to get all your consoles modded. You have to know somebody who can do it. You have to spend a lot of money to get the correct equipment, and it's
all
also
the accessories that connect everything together.
It's also a big time investment. If you don't have a lot of time and know how to hook all the stuff up, so it's a big investment to do that. And I honestly don't think it's for everybody.
Definitely not.
If you're gaming a lot and you love retro games and you have some extra spare money to spare, then do that. But I don't like that attitude of people coming down on other people that if they don't have, you or somebody else has, or me, if I said to somebody else hey, well, I've got this RGB setup, and what do you got over there? Your composite setup. It's that. Some people have that attitude. I'm not saying that you do. You don't.
No, I completely understand where you're going with this, 100%, and I agree too.
Because and I'm mostly talking about comments and things like that we get on YouTube on a lot of our videos that are oh, you got this, this big YouTube channel and you don't have the RGB SCART and all that. And it's it's not really the point. You know?
I mean, in my opinion, for the nerd videos, it adds, to have a perfectly crisp video output adds nothing to the video. It's not about that at all.
There you go.
So the only thing, if somebody had to say right now, I want to start playing older games and I want to use the original consoles for whatever reason, what's more important, making it RGB and getting the best output, or trying to find something without much lag? And that's what I was trying to get at before, is there's no comparison. So there was a couple of people that have been, trying to tell, oh yeah, we'll get RGB and then you use this cheap scaler and it looks great. Yeah, but, when you press the button and you could actually wait to see Mario jump, you can't play the game. So if somebody's on a budget and they need to start out, figure out what games you want to play, figure out how you can play them, and worry about lag first. Mm-hmm. And if a lot of times the solution is you just find some crappy old CRT on Craigslist for free, you bring it home, you hook it up with composite or RF. I would much rather see that, or like go get one of those low lag gaming monitors or something. But I'd much rather see people do that than spend all this money and then end up plugging it through a laggy scaler or into a TV that's not designed for it. You know, they got TCL brand TVs in America now. They're different names in different countries for like $350 that have really low lag. Right. So you could still, you know, you don't have to spend a ton of money. You don't have to be a pro. But yeah, in my opinion, it's, if you want to get into old gaming, it's lag first, then video second. Because
I totally agree with that. And yeah, so yeah, I do have like this expensive monitor and stuff like that. But I also I have sitting over there my CRT TV. I got my CRT TV for $40 at a Goodwill, and it's, by the way, it is awesome. My CRT TV.
Oh yeah,
$40.
Yep. Some of the guys in Brooklyn I've been working with are RGB modding those now. So, you know, you bring them onto the TV, you set up an appointment. It takes a couple hours, but it's got a SCART input in the back. And when you're done, for you know, much less than a crazy BVM broadcast monitor, you have something that looks like an arcade monitor. So, right. Of course, it's not as good as a $50,000 CRT, but still blows everything else away. So, yeah.
And I'll say one more thing, because you're talking a lot about lag. So, Ryan, my friend Ryan and I, we do this other show where we a lot of times we'll talk about game consoles, or we'll have conversations like this. We just talk about games. That's the name of the show. And we did a review of the, I think, N64, and we did one of the PlayStation, and blah blah blah. And finally, we were going to do one of the Retron 5, and we're like, oh, this week let's do a review of the Retron 5. And then he's like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So we go and we plug the Retron 5 in, because we're going to play it for a little while and then gather our opinions, and then we're going to record the video, right? So we go to plug it in. Thing's broken. I don't know how the thing broke. So we're like, okay, this thing's completely broken. We tried to fix it or whatever. The console is like fried. So we're like, great, okay, well, it's broken. So we had played the system before, and so we recorded a short thing of us just giving our general opinions of it. And I had played some games with it, and the system, you know, it's like you said, it's super bad with lag. You're playing a game, the lag is horrible, and it doesn't look that great. The color of the games look very different than they should, and things like that. So, so we recorded this short thing, and we were just going to put out this video of us just talking about the system as we normally would. But we're like, you know what? Since the console's broken, let's do something funny with this.
That was awesome. I just left myself a note to make sure to link to that. Of course, I had to. I absolutely loved it. I just left myself a note. I'm going to leave that link in the description as well. For anybody that's never seen it, anybody that's been frustrated by the Retron 5, it's so satisfying to watch.
So he took it out and he saw it up, so it was funny. So yeah, check that out. But anyway, I thought that was funny. And
that was hilarious.
Yeah. All right.
So I'll make sure to link everything, and I also want to link, once again, I know I've talked about it a bunch of times, but both your MS Paint video and then the video of how you made that. I've probably mentioned it 2 or 3 times in the podcast, but I couldn't freaking believe that you did that.
I think you're talking about the Mario Paint, not MS Paint.
Oh yeah, Mario Paint. Sorry.
Yeah. I guess I can briefly talk about that.
No, there's no limit to this, man, because that was mind-blowing. I thought you were kidding. When I first saw, like, the Twitter blurb when you posted, like, you know, I did the whole thing in Mario Paint, I'm like, what do you mean you did the whole thing?
That was a real debate with myself on whether or not I should do it, because YouTube Gaming launched in August of 2015, and I started streaming, and it's been my goal since then to stream a lot, basically. And I got to the point where I had that idea, and I'm like, I could animate something in Mario Paint. Nobody's ever, because they have the little tool in there where you can do like a guy jump roping or something like that, like the little animation tool, which is like 6 frames or something. It's very basic, and that's fine. It's good for like kids and stuff, but nobody's ever made a real animation in Mario Paint, because who's crazy enough to do that? Right. So I was like, I came up with that idea, and I'm like, I got to do it, because the thing that made me power through it and do it is because nobody had ever done it before. That's why I did it. And so I started doing it, and it's basically like I had the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoon on a TV. And then over here on this TV, I have the Super Nintendo and the game. And like in the beginning of the Ninja Turtle cartoon, it starts on the moon. Mm-hmm. And then it goes from the moon and it goes down to the sewer. And the sewer lid comes off, the turtles pop out, all that. So frame one, it's the moon. So over here, I draw the moon with the mouse. That drawing takes half hour or something to make the same image. Then I click the mouse because I have the video on the computer, and I go to frame 2, and now the moon went from here to here or whatever, here or something, and then I did that frame, and then the next frame, and then I quickly realized, okay, this is going to take a really long time. So I was working on it for about a week or two, and I think about 2 weeks into it, I was like, because at first with the idea I was just really excited about it, I started animating it without really thinking about how much work it was going to be and how long it was going to take. So about a week or something into it, I'm like, man, I haven't done a live stream in a while, and now I'm like animating this thing. It's like, if I stop to live stream, it's going to take even longer to animate this thing. So I had to like kind of choose, and I'm like, you know what? Nobody's ever done this before. I chose to do the animation. So I spent 5.5 months or something just animating that damn thing. And so I started watching a lot of Star Trek, and I had a laptop where I just had Netflix, and I watched the entire series of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the whole thing. And it was about as long as the whole series took. So I watched every single episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And by the time I finished Deep Space Nine, I think it took me then I started watching Voyager, and I think I got about halfway through the first season of Voyager, and then finally I finished the animation. And then at the end of it, I was like, you know what? I also need to add a thing in where I explain what the hell the video is and how I made it and stuff. So I added that on to the end. So that took another day or something. But anyway, so after 5-6 months of work, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about animators and all that. You work for 6 months or something like that, and you do all that work, and it's really, I'll just put it this way, it's a labor of love, because the return that I got back for 6 months of work was not a lot, but I'm happy that I did it now, because I can always go back. I like showing that video. Like if somebody's like, oh, hey, like, what have you been doing? Oh, I'd be like, oh, check out this Ninja Turtle thing that I spent 6 months working on. So it's, you know, I'm happy that I did it, but I don't think I would do it again because now I don't have the, I've done it now. And
well, you've already watched all of Deep Space Nine, so you can't.
Well, I can watch all of Voyager or something, but like now it wouldn't be new, and that was the thing that drove me through the 6 months, is that, okay, nobody's ever done it before, I have to do it. But now that I've done it, it's kind of like, people have seen it, they get it. So I don't know that I could spend another half a year of my life doing it. And also, I really love live streaming, and I had to stop live streaming for like 5 months to do it, and I don't think I'm willing to do that again.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, so
I just really hope that at some point that video gets back to at least somebody on the team that made Mario Paint, like one of the lead developers, because I would love to see the look on one of their faces when they see what you've done with their creation, you know?
That would be awesome. If somebody saw that and tweeted me or something like that, that would be cool, because you got to think about the people who made the game, and then years and years later somebody does something really creative with it. It reminds me of you know that, have you heard of Smooth McGroove? He's you should look him up. He's a guy that basically he recreates music from video games. And the screen, you know, the intro of the Brady Bunch where it's divided into all those like screens. It's kind of like that on the screen, and then he just goes. Boom, 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 boom,
I have seen him.
You know,
I have seen those.
And on the other,
really impressive.
or whatever. Yeah. And then once it's all combined, it sounds like the Mario theme song or something like that, and it's amazing. But the people, what I imagine is like the person who composed, you know, some of these songs that he did. I wonder if any of those composers ever watched him you know, it's amazing what some people are doing as sort of tributes to these video games. And Angry Video Game Nerd is really a tribute to a lot of these games. And I feel almost like if some of these game designers saw Angry Video Game Nerd, I hope that they don't look at it like, oh, well, screw this guy for saying Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a bad game. It's really, Angry Video Game Nerd, I think, is really more than anything, it's a love letter to video games more than hating video games, because the nerd wants the games to be good. He's just frustrated when they're not good. 'Cause the guy loves video games. He just wants the games to be good. So when they're not good, he goes crazy, and that's the humor of it. But, you know, so... But yeah,
that's awesome. I think a couple of my viewers actually work at Nintendo America. I won't say their names because I've gotten emails from them before. So who knows? Maybe they can get that to the right people. That would be pretty cool if you got a tweet one day from somebody over there.
I will say that if any of them watch Angry Video Game Nerd, I hope that they understand that we love the games. It's not about hating on the games, because I think some people think. Especially early on in the nerd, I think there was a lot of people that were like, "Yeah, fuck that game. Yeah, I agree with you. Fuck it." It's really like Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, the first video. James loves that game. He thinks it's awesome, you know? So it's not really hating on it. It's just more like, it's too bad this part of the game wasn't a little bit better, because this game has so much potential, but they did this a little wrong, but it's really, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's the Ghostbusters one did it for me, because I played that game so many times as a kid, and I did enjoy it, and I did have fun, but there were some of those ridiculously silly and frustrating parts about it just annoyed me. So, yeah, that was always what it was for me. It completely brought back the good feelings about video games and made fun of the silly parts.
Exactly. Yeah. So, all right.
All right, man. Well, this was absolutely awesome. You're welcome back anytime, and, you know, thanks again for taking the time to do this.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
A lot of fun.